What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host Phil for episode 282. Sorry for the delay. Bandits kind of had a party going on down at KeyBank Center on Sunday night. So we were pushed this recording to Monday night, and this is out on Tuesday. So you're hearing us in your ears on a rare Tuesday. But don't worry, we got a jam-packed show, so we're going to jump right into it. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Phil's article will be dropping shortly on Wednesday. I get an off week because there's no games to talk about. Ha, Phil. And then that's actually my first one in, 23 weeks? So I deserve a little bit of a break. You had 3 buys built in there. And then look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. There won't be one because it's a Bandits only show. Phil, for the 13th time in franchise history, the Buffalo Bandits will be making a finals appearance in the Lacrosse Indoor League, and it used to be called MLL, so I can't call it the NLL for all of those appearances. Only the third time in the last 25 years a team has been to 4 straight. The Rock from 99 to 03, the Rush from 15 to 18, and now Buffalo from 2019 to 2024. It's the 8th straight playoff win over the Toronto Rock, and we're going to break it down for you game by game and kind of go over the different departments. It's going to be a little bit different, Phil, because we haven't had to go over 2 games in one show in a year.
Yeah, it's been nice. We haven't had any multi-game weekends. I don't know. Did the Bandits just luck out this year? I feel like other teams had a few, but weren't they maybe makeup games? Was it really just one? Were they pretty much every week for other teams?
No, there was a few. Georgia had back-to-back weeks. Halifax had back-to-back weeks. Philly did. Saskatchewan.
So we got lucky.
I know a couple of those were the makeup game, but yeah, Buffalo got off with no big gauntlet weeks. They had 6 or 7 straight weeks after their final bye, but no back-to-back weekends, which was very nice. Yeah.
So that's been nice for us. And if there was a time to finally go over 2 games in one weekend, this is the time to do it. This is the time you want to do it. And luckily it came up all Buffalo for us.
Yeah. People were already pointing out my predictions were they didn't age well. And I replied with, yeah, they aged like milk. And that's part of it. I'm not going to take those down. Those are my predictions. And hey, I got them wrong. I am a man of my word. They will stay up. I own my predictions. I was dead wrong. And Phil was right on his predictions. He predicted a clean sweep for the Buffalo Bandits. I don't remember. I think he had a split for the San Diego Albany matchups. So we'll talk about that one on the Friday show. But game 1, this one in Hamilton, Buffalo just absolutely tears down the Toronto Rock and throws their little pebble back to Bandit land, where they will face them off on Saturday or Sunday. But they won this one 12-4. Buchanan had 3. Frazier, Brandon Robinson, Kluch all had 2. McKay, Byrne, and Smith each had 1. Vince 54 of 58 saves. Shots were 58-50 in favor of Toronto. The faceoffs 11-9 in favor of Toronto. Buffalo went 2 for 3 on the power play, and the Rock 1 for 8. Phil, an absolutely epic showdown that Buffalo just dominated from start to finish.
Yeah, this game was weird and great all at the same time. I mean, even in this one, it started very, very goaltender defense heavy, and it's kind of how we expected these games to go, especially with how playoffs started in general. They started very low scoring. I think it was the Bandits who had the most goals in the first round, and that came in overtime, and that was 10. So even that, not a very high score for Buffalo, who's averaging 13 goals a game. And for that to be across the entire NLL, that the highest scoring score in round 1 was 10 goals, we kind of knew that what these playoffs are starting to shape up and look like. It's just a very defensive lockdown by everybody across the entire league. And this game was no different to start. I mean, it took a while for the Bandits to even get going, and then it was that transition goal which started it off, I believe, for Georgia as well. And then McKay started it off once again. in Toronto with another opening goal for the Buffalo Bandits in transition to kick the party started. And then 2 minutes later, they would score again. And then they would score once more before the first ended. And at 3-0, they were looking really good. I mean, the 0 is huge, especially with the amount of penalties that they were taking. And that one, it was only one in the first quarter, but then it really started opening up in the end of the second quarter. But even that, for them to start the game 5-0, have the game-winning goal be in the first half, which you wouldn't find out till much later, obviously, but still just an incredible looking stat. But the penalties mounted very quickly, and for them to be able to weather that storm was really incredible. And like you mentioned, I mean, right at half, it was 5-0, and this game was never close. It never even felt close. And a big part of that was the second that Toronto finally got their first goal of the game. You're like, all right, it's still fine. 6-1, up 5, not a big problem. And Brandon Robinson would score less than 30 seconds later to shut that right down. And then he would score again 5 minutes later to really just put the game away already at 8-1. I mean, the second they scored, just shoving it right back in their face was just a huge, huge momentum killer. I mean, we saw what happened in game 2, which we'll go over later, but it's just that once you start to get one, it's about trying to build on that and actually go on a run, especially when you're down at that point, 6-1 for Toronto. You have to continue to build on that and not let the other team score. So for Robinson to score less than 30 seconds later, it just pretty much ends your hope, really, as a team. I mean, if that's how the game's going to go, that's how the game's going to go. And really frustrating from a Toronto standpoint, incredible from a Bandit standpoint. And the big theme throughout these two games, which we are going to talk a ton about, is Matt Vince and how he has just looked beyond incredible. And that game was no different. I mean, Nick Rose comes into that game as the goalie to beat. He's, the, like you mentioned, Triple Crown winner of the NLL regular season, likely looking at a goaltender of the year, possible MVP. And Matt Vince just completely outdueled him and looked like the better goalie. It's not that Rose really had a bad game, but Vince just stepped his incredible, what is it? I don't know.
Run.
Yeah, I would say run.
Incredible
it was just
run,
the greatest goalie of all time. And it just kind of like showed that experience and really just stepped that up to the level that we know he can get to. And he brought it. And my goodness, was he good.
Yeah, and I'll give a credit to Banditland. Banditland took over that arena once it got out of hand, like when they went up 8-1 after 3, because 3-0 after the first, 5-0 in half, and 8-1 after the third quarter. Toronto Rock fans were just headed for the exits and headed for the exits like with swarm. Everybody was bailing on them, heading for the exits, trying to get to their cars early, which I'm sure they did. But guess what? When all the Rock leave at one point, you're still going to hit a traffic jam. But Banditland completely took that over. Even the first half, when the game was still within grasp for Toronto, you could hear Banditland over the broadcast. And, they've always traveled well, and they definitely traveled well to hear it. It definitely sounded like a home game, or like a second home, I should say. But then, flash forward game 2, Sunday night, you already know Albany is going to be in the finals. You're taking on them if you can get there. You're trying to finish business at home. And it was dicey. But Buffalo walks out of this one 10-8. We'll get more on the specifics in a little bit here. But Frazier had 3, all in the fourth quarter. Nanakoke, Byrne, and Smith each had 2. Bucky had 1. Vince, 50 of 58 saves. Shots were 58-45 in favor of Toronto. Face-offs, 16-7 in Toronto. I was actually shocked it was that close. And then Toronto, 3 for 6 on the power play, so they kind of figured it out where they didn't in game 1. Buffalo was 1 for 2. But, Phil, you get up 1-0 early. Toronto scores 2 within 29 seconds to take that 2-1 lead. Buffalo would retake that 3-2 lead right at the end of the first, but Toronto would score 4 straight in the second, including 3 in 2 minutes to take that 6-3 lead at halftime. Teams would trade goals in the third. It would be 7-4. Then Toronto, minute 32 into the fourth quarter, they go up 8-4, and you're thinking, man, you've only scored 4 goals. You need 4 just to tie it here. What's going to go on? And then Banditland came alive, and then the offense came alive, and it was just unbelievable, that stretch run. And when they say Buffalo, like Banditland is another member of that team, this game proved exactly like it. I don't think I've ever been a part of a sporting event quite like that. They scored 6 straight. Frazier 33 seconds after Matthews scored, 56 seconds after that, 53 seconds after that. Frazier would tie with 8:20 left in the game and give the Bandits the lead with 5:39 to go. That arena has never been that loud since the Max Adler goal. And I know I keep referencing that because that was the loudest it's ever been. This might have topped it. I mean, this honestly, this run that they put on, I was getting tired of standing up and sitting down and standing up and sitting down because it was happening so quickly. But as soon as they poured on those 2 goals, Phil, I don't know if you felt it, but it was like, this is going to be the Toronto that we were used to, where they crumble and they can't defeat Buffalo, and Buffalo just poured it on. And it was unbelievable to see what that offense was finally able to unlock in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, both Fraser and Smith mentioned it in their post-game press conferences that, especially after that 6th goal, like, Smith especially, he said that he literally got chills hearing Bandit land and how insanely loud they got. And you could tell it was that 5th goal by Fraser to get it to 8-5. Like, that was decent and it was good. And it was like, okay, we're not out of it. You're still in it. But that 6th goal that quickly after, that's the goal that really, I think, turned the game. And you could tell Bandit land was absolutely back in it. And like you said, Smith said, he got chills, and he said he felt the energy from the crowd, and the offense immediately fed off of that. And then you see it. I mean, the Burn goal right after that, and then Fraser, and then Burn. I mean, just the way it happened and how quickly it happened. Like, it wasn't one of those games where, I mean, yes, it took until the fourth quarter, obviously, but when it happened, it was still a lot of time left in the game. I mean, you were down by 1 with still 11 minutes left. You tied it with 8 minutes left, and then you went ahead with 5 minutes left. It wasn't one of those where you're pouring it on with, 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left. Are they going to have enough time to really take over the game? Like, is there enough time to come back like San Diego was doing against Albany? They had a lot of really late comebacks, but they ran out of time. Buffalo was able to get it done very early in the fourth, where they really took over. And I do think that 6th goal by Nanticoke is where it really tipped the scales, and Bandit Land was right back into it, extremely loud. And I think they just completely took over the game. You could tell the energy had shifted, not just from the fans, but from the team. Like, every time they came out on offense after that, especially that Burn goal, you could tell the drive was different. Like, I mean, even Johnny mentioned it, that for 3 quarters, the offense was pretty flat. And to me, they had some really good opportunities. They did have some posts. They did have a decent amount of shots that seemed to go through Nick Rose, but just squeak wide, where they were getting past him. He wasn't sure where the ball was, but it was still going wide of the net. So it's like they were just a little bit off on some of their plays, but for the most part, they were pretty flat on offense for the first 3. But after that 2nd goal, you could tell they came out with a different purpose on offense. You could tell they were amped up. They got their confidence back. They were feeding off the crowd, and then they just completely took over. And like I mentioned from that first game, where the second Toronto scored, the Bandits scored right back. In this one, there was no comeback. There was not a single goal that Toronto came back. So yes, it's obviously you need the offense to score at least 5 there, and then 6 was fantastic to really put it away. But at the same time, the defense completely locked it down after that fourth quarter first goal and didn't allow another one for the rest of the game. And that is a huge reason they were able to have that comeback. Like, yes, it was fast and heavy for the most part, that comeback, but every single time Toronto had the ball, you still had to stop them from scoring, because if they get even 1 in that situation, all that momentum goes away. The crowd gets quiet again, possibly. And, it just completely shifts the energy. But because the defense and Vince were able to stop them and have a few really big saves during that stretch, you were able to keep that offensive momentum going, and then they just absolutely rolled. And it still blows my mind that for 3 games throughout the entire year, the 2 regular season games and then this one, that Toronto just crumbles in the fourth quarter, when typically they're a very good fourth quarter team. But for some reason, it's almost like, I know it's not, but it's almost like the Bandits just toy with them for 3 quarters, just allowing them to stay in the game, thinking they have a chance. And then all of a sudden they just rip it away from them and just come back and crush any hope they had of, tying this series up and possibly going to the finals.
Yeah, and we got to give a ton of credit to Swenny, because
Oh, yeah.
his charge is the reason that the crowd in Banditland went absolutely bananas.
I
But let's
literally, I was like, I needed to almost go buy a water bottle the amount of times because every single time the Bandits were on offense, he had us count. And I was like, oh my God, like between counting every single time and the defense every single time that they were on defense in the fourth quarter it was exhausting. Like you said, for standing up and down, sitting down every time they scored, it was just as exhausting trying to cheer and remain that loud. I was parched toward the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and we had a couple of friends that were sitting in front of us, and we started this high five chain. And after I believe it was the eighth goal, Brooke ran to the bathroom, and she came back, and we were waiting to high five her. And I was the last in order. I was like, "You are not high fiving me until you high five Brooke," because we were going in the same pattern for all of those goals runs. We're like, we're not taking any chances. We're gonna wait right here. We're not gonna sit down until she's back here. She gave the high fives. We gave the high fives, and then they took the lead. I was like, pat on our backs. That's something nice here. But let's move on to the offense here. The good, since we're already about 18 minutes into this. I thought this was another game where you saw the offense spread it around. I'll talk it as a whole here with these two games. Nanakoke, 2-3-5 on 5 shots. Kluch, 2-2-4 on 8 shots. Byrne, 3-8-12 on 21 shots. Hint, hint, nod, nod. I told you he might struggle scoring against Nick Rose. Three's not bad, but on 21 shots, I just pointed that out. I just want to pat myself on the back there. Brandon Robinson, 2-1-3, 9 shots. Bucky, 4-2-6, 8 shots. Smith, 3-7-10, 14 shots on net. And then Frazier with 5 goals, 5 points, 17 shots on net. It was another game where you saw the depth scoring. And even particularly in this series, yes, Burns still got his 12 points. Smith still got his 10. But then you got Nanakoke with 5, Kluch with 4, Brandon Robinson chips in 3, Bucky with 6, Frazier with 5. So it was a whole collective of what this offense was able to do. And yes, a lot of it came in the fourth quarter in that second game. But that's what we've been saying for a while now, is this offense is perfect when, yes, Dane and Josh are getting theirs, but the rest of the offense is getting involved. They're setting the picks. You saw plenty of opportunities in this one. You saw like Nanakoke drawing that penalty while on the power play in the first one. That was massive. Dane draws the 5 minutes. Yes, it was reduced down to 2, and that was the right call, but he gets another 5 later on there, goes on that big run in the first game. Kluch and Byrne nearly get that pick and roll, but Kluch's foot's in the crease. 3 straight possessions in the fourth. They kill off the full 30 seconds. It's all the small little things that this whole offense was doing in game 1. And then you flip to game 2. And yes, the offense was really dry and there wasn't much going on through 3 quarters, but you can only contain this offense for so long. And we saw it for 3 of these 4 games is once that fourth quarter hits, this offense is just unleashed. I don't know if it's the Rock get tired and back on the back end playing so physical, or if Nick Rose gets tired back there, but in the first game, they score 6 in the fourth. In the second game, they score 7th in the fourth. Game 2, that's a different story. And then, I'm sorry, game 1 in the playoffs here, that's a different story. But game 2 in the playoffs, they score 6 straight. So I don't know what it is about what this offense is capable of doing in the fourth when it comes to the Toronto Rock, but they're absolutely capable of pouring it on, and they did just that in game 2 here.
Yeah, when it was 8-4, when it was 7-4, I kept telling myself, we saw it already 2 times this year during the regular season. This is a fourth quarter comeback team. This whole year, the Bandits have been a fourth quarter team, which I know you and I do not enjoy for our blood pressure or hearts or, nerves, because last year they were a third quarter team, took over the game, and then would kind of weather the storm in the fourth. This year they did okay in the third and would have a lot of big comebacks in the fourth, which is, I guess, more fun for Josh Byrne. I believe he mentioned that he loves close games in the fourth quarter, but for us, it's not quite as,
they scored, on average, they scored more than a goal more in the fourth than they did the third.
Yeah. So big flip from last year, and yeah, it's great. And it's obviously a lot of fun. Like that was a very fun game, but it's also very nerve wracking. But so I just kept telling myself, especially when it was 7-4 headed into the fourth, I was like, all right, they haven't done very well, but this has been a fourth quarter team twice this year against Toronto. You've been able to pour it on in the fourth. And then it was 8-4, and I was like, all right, that's not good. But then once they started that run, and like I said, especially that 6th goal to get within 2, and Bandit Land just took over. It was just incredible to see that comeback. But again, just kind of kept telling myself over and over, like, okay, this is a fourth quarter team against Toronto. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but they're really good in the fourth. And like you said, I don't get it either. I'm not really sure what the big, flip of a switch is in that fourth quarter, but to score the way they did, like you mentioned, I mean, earlier in this episode, you scored 4 throughout the entire 3 quarters. Now you have to score 4 more in 1 quarter just to tie it. And they were able to score 6, and it honestly looked easy. Like, even the possessions that they didn't score, I mean, there was an illegal pick, I believe, that was turned over, and then just there were still great opportunities. They just didn't cash in on them, but they looked really good the entire stretch run as soon as they got that one by Fraser. And himself, I think he's been someone who's really had Rose's number in the original 2 games. I just went back and looked at your notes. He scored 6 goals between the original 2 games and then another 5 goals in these 2 games. So he seems to be the one that they kind of lean on against Toronto, and especially Nick Rose. I don't know. I don't know if it's just his play style of his like kind of sneaky goals where you don't really know when or where he's going to shoot. It just seems like maybe it throws Rose off just enough, but he seems to have Rose's number quite a bit. I mean, that's 11 goals in 4 games against one of the best in the entire league. So I think he's been a bit of their key. And then Nanakoke also having a really good game. But the offense as a whole, I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, it's a very tough defensive team and a really, really good goalie. So, I mean, yes, like you said, you can only contain them so long, but there's only so much kind of complaining or being upset with the offense you can really do. I mean, this is what playoff lacrosse is. It's going to be a little bit more low scoring other than last year. Like, this is closer to 2 years ago where the games against Toronto were really, really close. And even I think that first game against Albany, I think they won okay, but I think it was a little bit closer. But it's a lot less like last year where they pretty much just stomped everybody all the way to the title. I mean, this year it's a lot closer with the overtime win, and then 12-4 felt a little bit more like last year, and then this one was much, much closer, obviously. So just a more grinded out series than we were used to last year, where they put up, 20 goals and 17 and 16, just crushing everybody. And this year's just a lot closer, but I think the offense is still performing really well. And like you said, it's nice to not have to lean on your top scorers. I mean, yes, they still got theirs, and yes, they were still a huge part of this game, especially with the way Josh was starting to take over at the end. But even his assists were really, really important in this game, and Dane doing what he did. But it's just not having to have to rely on them. And it's great that they're there, especially in the Georgia game where Byrne was able to put up 5 and quite literally pretty much put the team on his back and carry them to the next round. Like, it's incredible to have a player like that on your team, and that's what those players are meant to do in those situations. But it's also a much more balanced attack and a much better offense when they are not solely relied on to score, and you can have other people like Nanakoke, like Fraser, really pick up. And even Buchanan, I mean, 2 games, 4 goals. He also is a huge, huge part of this offense. And I know we mentioned it in our chat. Finding a replacement for him is just not going to be possible. He is just a different kind of player out there. The way he plays, the way he scores goals, everything that he does on the field. There's just no one like him in the NLL. And I'm sure there are other players that hustle a lot and do the right things, but his NLL, lacrosse IQ is through the roof. His hustle's through the roof. He never gives up on any play. He's always the last man on, or last man out of there, first one on. And just his mentality, his abilities, I just do not think you're going to find a replacement for Buchanan. And this, 2-game set against Toronto here with 4 goals and 2 assists is just pure him. And he's coming up as a big veteran leader on that offense.
Well, Phil, we're going to have to pick up the pace on this because we're already half an hour through. So we're going to have to think on speeding up some of these segments. But before we move on to the negatives, because everything was not positive with the offense, let's dive into our first sponsor here, Tap That Tap Room.
There are so many notes to scroll through.
That's what I mean. We got to pick up the pace.
Tap That Tap Room at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar. What that means is you pay for the ounce. So you go up. They have 30 consistently rotating taps of beer, cider, sour, seltzers, and malt beverages. You can try as many as you want. You can have as little or as much as you would like, and just have a great chance to try a variety of different drinks.
So, like we said, there's trivia every Wednesday at 7:30, but there's also karaoke every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. And I don't know about everybody else out there this weekend that was kind of trying to kill time on Saturday waiting for the home game for the Bandits on Sunday. But the weather's a lot nicer. I was doing a lot of yard work. And with the nice weather, that means patio season is in full swing. Patio bevs are a true and wonderful thing. They do have a large patio with board and card games for everybody, so you can also bring down your dogs. They are dog friendly. I fully anticipate being there many, many times this summer to just chill on the patio because we have been looking for a wonderful spot to be doing this. So if you are like me looking for a nice patio or other things to do, you can check out their Facebook page for all their posted events or at tapthattaproom.com. Like we said, not everything was positive with the offense in these two games. The first game, nearly the first full quarter, they didn't get a good offense. It seemed like they were struggling to figure it out. The transition game was keeping them in it. Man, Vince was keeping them in it. Just at the end of the dying seconds of the first quarter, dumb penalty by Chase Frazier. I don't know what he was thinking. There was no real threat in those times. Just set the ball down. I don't know why he had to roll it to the corner. That these refs are calling every ticky-tack foul. It was just a very dumb decision.
You could tell he knew the second he did it too. He was like he just hung his head. He knew he made a really, really dumb mistake. And you could just tell the second, his reaction to the call, he's like, he knew immediately. It's like, well, that was dumb.
In those games, and that's what we were talking about Chase Frazier and I can't remember Nick Weiss.
Yes.
Those two players where we said you have to play smarter and figure out how the refs are calling it. It was that play can't happen moving forward, especially moving against Albany in the finals here. Bad 2-on-1 defense, shorthanded by Dane. I don't really know. It seemed like he was stuck in the middle of nowhere, and it didn't seem like that was the type of play that you would typically see from a Dane Smith who plays both sides of the ball so often. It just seemed like he played the middle rather than picking a guy and giving Vino an opportunity here. Just a bad play there. Then the second game, the second and third quarters, the offense was just horrible. Like you said, there were some opportunities, but they scored 2-12 with left in the first quarter. They didn't score again until the third quarter. That's a 20-minute drought, almost a 21-minute drought. And then they had one goal from the 2:12 mark in the first quarter to the 12:55 mark in the fourth quarter. That's 34-17 of one goal. And you got to hand it to the defense. You got to hand it to Matt Vince that when the Buffalo offense has struggled this season and they've gone through these goal droughts, the defense and Matt Vince has stepped up wonderfully. But, moving forward, you're 2 wins away from a back-to-back championships here. These goal droughts have to be figured out. You can't keep relying on a fourth quarter 6-goal run to keep doing it. I'm not trying to nitpick everything here. We're just trying to go back and forth between, and this is kind of difficult trying to sum everything up in 2 games in one show here, but
especially when the offense were wildly different games.
Different games, yes. And I think that's one of the things that we've been talking about, and they've gotten away with it a lot this season. I just wish they wouldn't do it. And it's easier said than done talking behind a microphone here about, these goal droughts. But I just wish that, that 6-goal run that they had, and in the end, they scored 10 goals, which was enough to win. And in game 1, they scored 12 goals, which was enough to win. I just wish they would spread those 10 and 12 goals along as you go and not, wait until the fourth quarter just to pour it on 6 straight goals and, get the crowd going.
Yeah, there were times that they just looked, especially the third quarter of the second game. Obviously, everything's under a microscope because you're losing and the intensity is just ramped up that much more, where every possession you're just waiting for them to finally score, get something going, and they just were not doing it. I mean, they were completely shut out in the second quarter. I mean, Toronto had its own 4-goal run in the second quarter of that game to take it, go up 6-3, and there was no answer. And that's the big thing. Just like I said, I mean, it's a game of runs, and it's about stopping those runs, and the Bandits did not have an answer early. And even that third quarter, it was great to see them finally get one. It was 6-4. You're within 2. And like you mentioned about Vince and the defense, they stopped them for another, 6-7 minutes before Toronto got their next goal to go up by 3. The offense had plenty of opportunities to take that momentum from that Dane Smith goal in the third quarter and continue to build on it and get closer, pull within 1, tie the game. And they just could not do it. In every possession, I was just sitting in my seat, all right, offense, this is it. This is a possession, get it going. And then they would not. And they would get the ball back without Toronto scoring. I was like, all right, this is it. Get it going. And they just would not do it. And they were struggling. I mean, again, it's going to happen. Toronto was known for their defense. They're known for their goaltending. You're going to struggle. Yes, it's a team that's, averaged 13 goals a game, but this is playoff lacrosse. It's what it is. It's defensive. It's physical. And honestly, I thought in that second game, very contrary to the first game, I thought the first game, the Bandits looked like the team that wanted it a lot more. And I thought they were doing a lot of the little things between transition goals and secondary opportunities. Like everything seemed to be going outside of penalties. Seemed to be going Buffalo's way in the first game. In the second game, it seemed completely different, where Toronto seemed to really tighten things up, and the amount of secondary opportunities they were getting on offense to keep the Bandits defense out there. And then the Bandits were not getting many rebounds. I mean, if they did have the opportunity, they just weren't scooping them, whereas Toronto was. And it just seemed like it flipped in that second game, where Toronto was playing either hungrier or things were just bouncing their way, where they were getting a lot more secondary opportunities than Buffalo. And every single time Buffalo had an offensive possession, they would, run down, shoot, not get the ball back, and Toronto's right back, and Toronto would get a rebound and get 1 or 2 or 3 rebounds. And then the defense is out there for a really long time just trying to hang on. And then the offense would come on and, within 10, 20 seconds, make a quick shot. It wouldn't go in. And then the defense is right back out there. So huge credit to the defense for keeping them in that. But the offense definitely struggled. And like you said, we've talked about this the entire year, where they just go on these massive, massive goal droughts. And then all of a sudden it clicks. Like what? That's why I just don't get. And we've already talked about it a lot about this fourth quarter. Like what flips? I know having the crowd behind you and like getting your confidence back, that's huge in a game like this, where you've only scored 4 goals the entire game. Like you need that confidence to trust yourselves, trust your game plan, and just know it's going to work. And I think the crowd was a massive factor in that fourth quarter. But before that, just like why does all of a sudden it work in the fourth quarter, where you can rattle 6 goals off and, like you said, finish with 10, where it looks really good? But before that, it's just an extreme struggle. And they've done it all year long, where they just go on these huge goal droughts where they cannot figure it out. And then they'll just roll with like 4 or 5 in a row and just take over the game and win. Like what happens when during those times where they can't score at all, and then all of a sudden everything just clicks and you rattle off a huge goal streak and then take the game? It's just strange for an offense that's this lethal, this talented, to go on such long goal droughts. And it really doesn't help just the game in general. It makes it that much more difficult. Obviously runs are something you want to stop, but if there was one thing I think you and I could change from this entire year, it's absolutely these goal droughts, because it's not a 1 game thing or a 2 game thing. It's been a year-long thing where they go a very long time in stretches throughout the game without scoring. And if we've been trying to get it to stop for a long time, they haven't yet, but they keep winning. So it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot is going to be talked about is that 6-goal run that the offense had. But to me, and this will be a nice transition here, is the defense and Matt Vince are the reason that the Buffalo Bandits won this series by far. I know you scored 12 and you kind of ran it up on them, but your defense allowed 4. And then in this one,
in that first one, Nick Rose only allowed 8 before they really started getting desperate and switching goalies and empty netters. So
yeah, it's even in the second one, you only allowed 8 against the third. I think it was the third most high scoring team in the regular season, and you allowed 8. And that is credit to the defense and the work that they put in, especially, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit here, but Matt Vince. But the penalty kill for the Buffalo Bandits in game 1 was just lethal. They were perfect until that final 5-minute major where Corey Small scored in the dying seconds. But what really stood out is, the defense on Challen Rogers, the defense between Cam Wires and Zach Belter and Justin Martin. Those are the 3 that I really noticed D'ing up Challen Rogers. And he was playing more offensive shifts in this one because Dan Lintner was a healthy scratch for whatever reason. That was confusing to me going in, but they would not give an inch to him. You saw, I already mentioned the penalty kill, but C. Priolo, the caused turnovers on the penalty kill, holding Toronto scoreless for 39 minutes, holding them to just 1 goal for 47 minutes. It's just, this defense was absolutely lethal both games. You had McKay, who's got 3 points, but he also had a caused turnover. Cam Wires, who 2 blocks, 3 caused turnovers. Dawson, 4 block shots, 2 caused turnovers. I'm sorry, those are just in one game. I'll go over the full games here. There's too many numbers here, but McKay, 4 points, 6 loose balls, 2 block shots, 2 caused turnovers. Cam Wires, 10 loose balls, 2 block shots, 3 caused turnovers. Dan Dawson's going to need an ice pack, 5 block shots, 2 caused turnovers. Bomberry, 2 block shots. Nick Weiss, 2 block shots, 2 caused turnovers. Justin Martin, 2 block shots. Steve Priolo, 8 block shots, including 6 in the game on Sunday, 3 caused turnovers. Zach Belter caused turnover. This defense was just absolutely all over him. Like there was big plays everywhere. The penalty kill was unbelievable. You saw where I won't really talk about the negatives, but you saw when Dan Dawson had the penalty and the backups had to come in. That was such a integral piece that Steve Dietrich and the team added was Paul Dawson. Everybody will talk about Connor Farrell in the faceoffs and everything. I thought the main piece that changed this defense and changed this penalty kill was the addition of Paul Dawson, because one, he has played with Matt Vince before in the past and knows exactly the shots he wants to face, but the work that he put in on the penalty kill that has turned that around, the work that he's put in with Cam Wires has turned Cam Wires' game around. And the switch that they flipped to block more shots and be in the shooting lanes and not get Matt Vince so many shots that he has to come up with, this addition of Paul Dawson, and I was a bit skeptical on it when it happened, and I'm good enough to admit it. I said, hey, if he stays out of the penalty box, he's going to be a good depth piece. He has been one of the best leaders back there on not just the penalty kill, but in general. And he stayed out of the box and he's been playing smart. He's been an integral piece to this defense, along with the defense getting healthy. But I thought Paul Dawson, his play back there and his leadership back there has taken this defense to another level. And you just look at the numbers that they've given up. Corey Small, 4-1-5 on 17 shots. Chris Bushi had 1 goal on 28 shots. Unbelievable. And I know Matt Vince had made some unbelievable saves, but 28 shots, 1 goal. Dan Craig disappearing act. He should be a magician. 1 goal, 8 shots. Tom Schreiber, 2-5-7, 24 shots. Dan Lintner, nothing. Wild. 4 shots on net. And then Mark Matthews, he shrunk in the big time as well. And I think a lot of that is due to the defense. 2-4-6, 18 shots on goal. And, the only other big thing that I want to mention here is this. Remember the Colorado series 2 finals ago, Phil, where we saying this defense is too small? This game proved that this defense has taken its size to a different level with the Zach Belters, the Cam Wires, the Paul Dawsons, the Steve Priolos, the Adam Bomberries. This defense was not getting pushed around. How many times did you see the Toronto Rock players trying to back down a player? And it would either end in, you're not going anywhere and you're going to have to pass it somewhere, or cause turnover. I remember Nick Weiss, Mark Matthews trying to back him down, just knocks the cause turnover away. It was unbelievable what this defense was able to accomplish in this series, allowing 12 total goals. Unbelievable. They're in my opinion, the number 1A or number 1B reason that the Buffalo Bandits swept the Toronto Rock in this series.
Yeah, and I don't know where I saw it, so don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know why I'm blanking so much on where I saw it. I was talking about, I think it was San Diego was the oldest team in the playoffs. Albany's the youngest. And I believe it said that the Bandits have the tallest, like the biggest team by average height. And like you mentioned, just 2 years ago, since the Colorado getting pushed around all by Zed Williams for the most part. I mean, he just was taking them down like it was absolutely nothing. And to see
and they went out and drafted Cam Wires, Zach Belter,
right.
and Dylan Robinson.
Right. And to see them go out and fix that issue immediately, not take your time. And then even like you mentioned, bringing in Paul Dawson, another huge guy, and to see what Dawson
last year.
Right. And Bomberry, who is, what do we call him? An angry teddy bear. He's a big boy. Yeah. He is a big boy out there. And just to see that even Martin, who's the smallest guy out there, I believe, on defense, plays big. Like, he plays extremely well one-on-one. And we've always liked him as a lockdown defender. But to say that about one of your smallest players is just interesting, that he's one of your best one-on-one defenders going up against some of these bigger guys. And he just does not flinch at all. So, I mean, the entire defense as a whole, absolutely incredible. Dawson, like you were able to admit, and I will also admit, we were thinking at best he was a depth piece to this defense, who at the time when they acquired him was very banged up, still, working through a lot of injuries. And you're like, okay, great to have him. Not exactly what we were hoping for as a, defensive player to come in and really try to push this team over the edge, because at that point in the season, they were still trying to fight for playoffs and, really just kind of get this team kicking into gear. So we thought they needed a piece to take them to that next step and really just get this season going. And Dawson has been all of that and more. I mean, what an incredible pickup by Dietrich to see the potential that Paul Dawson has, and for him to come in, like you mentioned, not just being great and not just already having the ability to play with Vince, know exactly what he's looking for, know how he communicates, but his leadership has just been pretty much unmatched. I mean, no, Priolo is an extremely good leader, but honestly, I think he's taken a step back this year, not in his play style. He's still incredible, but I think in his leadership, he doesn't seem quite as active. Yes, he's still talking to Vince all the time, but as far as just his general leadership, and this isn't really a shot at him, he's still doing a absolutely incredible job. Like you mentioned, 6 block shots in that second game alone. So this is nothing against Priolo at all.
I think it's more you're looking for more like a vocal leader on the field.
Right.
Like you're not seeing that as you're still seeing the leadership. You're just not seeing as vocal. Yes.
Yeah. But I think Dawson, you can tell, even if it's not necessarily on the field, but in practice, like you said, the difference that he's been able to make in Wires alone, I mean, it's just been incredible. And then the entire defense, I think Wires even mentioned it, that since he's come in, the entire defense has been willing to put their bodies on the line that much more. And this team continues to lead every single game in the block shot category. And it's not by 1 or 2, it's by a lot. And you can tell other teams are getting very frustrated that they cannot get their shots through this defense, who just continues to put their body on the line. And Dawson is a massive reason for that. So huge shout out to Dietrich. But even in this second game, I mean, it's all about the defense to me in that second game. Yes, the incredible comeback from the offense is, why you ended up winning, but the defense to not give up on this game at all. I mean, the entire time you're looking at 3 goals in the first half by the Bandits offense, and then just 4 goals all the way through 3 quarters. And the defense could have kind of said like, oh, maybe this isn't our night. We don't have to try as hard. We'll just, let them kind of take over. And obviously that's not the mentality they have, but to continue to play as hard as they did. And like I mentioned, I honestly think Toronto threw so much more at the Bandits defense to keep them out on the field constantly. And then there was one play, it was in the second game, I think it was toward the end, where Toronto had just come off 2 or 3 straight resets of the clock. The Bandits offense went down, had a very quick shot. And I was like, all right, that's not good. Your defense has just been out there for a very long time, and you just threw them right back out there. I know it's, a rotation, different guys, but some of them are going right back out there after a very long stretch, and they just must have been incredibly exhausted in this game. And you can tell by the shots on net and the saves that were made. I mean, 58 shots on goal by Toronto, and the defense played really well. I mean, that's just how much time they had, how many balls they had, and just how much they were throwing at the net. And I think it was the first game, the defense forced, I believe, I could be getting this wrong,
35.
I would say 35 shots off net because of how well they were playing. That is an insane number to be forcing them to miss the net because of how well you're playing defense. I mean, yes, the offense did really well in the first one. Yes, they had the massive comeback. I'm not trying to take it away from them. Obviously, you need them to score goals in order to win, but the defense, and we'll get into Matt Vince shortly, I just think they are the reason that this team is really starting to take over. And I mean, since they've clicked toward the end of the season, they have not had, in my opinion, a bad game since the end of the season all the way through playoffs so far. They've just looked absolutely dialed in, and this is the team you kind of expected the entire season. And then once the defense got healthy and really started to put it all together, including Matt Vince, they've just been unstoppable. And this is another great example of it.
5 straight games under 10 goals.
Like that's what we
defense and
how many times did we say like this is the game they're going to click? I mean, to think that this defense was allowing 13 goals every single game for 8 games straight, they allowed at least 13, and now you're at 5 straight of not allowing 10. Like, just the flip they've been able to have is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, 8 straight games. Yep, unbelievable. But yeah, there's just 2 other things that I really want to point out with this defense that I saw were good. First off, Nick Weiss, he's a bad man. I would want him in my corner no matter what. Hostrauser, ripped off his helmet and got a clean sucker punch in. Nick Weiss could have just folded up and said, hey, I'll take that penalty. Got up from it with his cut open eye and was just dropping haymakers I don't think any connected, but with the
He did once
awesome
he tackled
takedown.
him.
Yeah, awesome takedown, and then he did get a couple more clean shots when he was on top of Hostrauser. But that is a man that I would not want to
No.
be messing with at all. He is a loose cannon when he has to be, just an absolute warrior out there, and that was another reason that I think they sparked the rest of their game there and was not taking any of Toronto's crap. But the second one, and I think we would be wrong to not mention it, in game one, Buffalo's up 3-0, and you see Toronto put the ball in the back of the net, and you're like, okay, it's 3-1. What's going on here? But then the whistle, and it's turned over, and instantly Cloutier scores, and it's 4-0. And you're going, what the heck happened here? And we rewound it and looked at it all. Zach Belter made that whole series happen. Like, there's no other player that made that exact scenario happen, from making it a 3-1 game to a 4-0 game.
Huge,
and
huge,
you
huge,
saw
huge.
he get beat by his defender. And instead of just giving up on the play, he pushes Chris Bushi into the crease, which disallows the goal. Then you think, okay, he made a great play. He could have just been standing around. He was the first one to the bench that got Kluch out the front door that led to that goal. So not only did he cause the goal not to be counted, he caused the Buffalo Bandits goal to be counted. That is coming from a rookie in his ninth game. If you can get that type of hustle from a rookie and you see it emulate through the rest of the team, I don't know if how many people actually saw that play develop, but it was an unbelievable play by a rookie that you could have just stood around and celebrated his great play to push Bushi into the crease to disallow the goal, but to have the awareness to bust his butt to the bench and free Kluch out the front door to make it 4-1. If it was a 3-1 game rather than a 4-0 game, that whole game one could have flipped on its head. But because of the hustle and the smarts of one player, and I'm not trying to discredit everybody else's play, but that one play by that one player on that one situation completely changed the course of that game, in my opinion.
Yep. And I believe they counted that as the turning point of the game on the broadcast. So absolutely correct. And like you said, it's funny. Before that goal, before any of that situation even happened, I was watching the game with my parents, and I was even telling them, I was like, it's crazy what 3-1 versus 4-0 looks like. But before any of that happened, before the goal happened, I was just watching the game, and I was like, 3-1 in lacrosse is much, much scarier than a 4-0. I was just talking about the future. Like, if Toronto gets the next goal, that doesn't look great. Like, 3-1's not a great score, but 4-0, that looks really good. And that is exactly what happened. And it was just a wild play. And like you said, Belter's hustle just unmatched on that play. I mean, just the smarts to shove your guy into the crease to disallow the goal, because I think it would have been close. I tried rewatching it a few times. It was very close if Bushi did reestablish 2 feet down, but Toronto had already used their challenge, so they couldn't challenge it anyway. But then, like you mentioned, to just not stand around and, be happy about the play you just made to disallow a goal and pat yourself on the back, but to be the first one all the way over to the bench, which was on the far side at that time, and to get Cloutier out the other door to score. I mean, just what a massive, massive play in that game.
Yeah, a few negatives about this defense, not a ton, but first game, Cam Wires is slow getting the ball. I don't know why he didn't even pick it up. I don't know if he saw the clock not tick over, but then Frazier, the 8 seconds to start the game. It's just, there's at least 1 or 2 of those a year that Buffalo just has brain farts where they just don't get the ball over in time. And it's due to just being lackadaisical or just, brain farts. Chris Bushi did get in Belter's head. It was after the Dawson penalty. You did see Belter going at Bushi after Dawson goes to the box. And I think, it's one of those smart veteran moves there. Cam Wires, 5-minute major, very unlucky call in my opinion. It kind of was the switch off and he got him high, but again, take your second hand off the stick and it won't happen. Second game, McKay, dumb penalty, gave him the 5-minute major. I don't get it. The ball's nowhere near the player. I don't know why you're in it. I do again believe that it was not intentional. He didn't mean to get Bushi in the head. Take your second hand off the stick. It's that simple. You can't get cross-checking to the face if your second hand's off the stick. Bushi and Dawson, 2 minutes each. I thought it was the right call. It was a bad acting job by Paul Dawson. And then the 6th goal in the game 2, it was horrible defense by Priolo. But if you're thinking about 2 whole games, and I have 6 notes here on the defense, it's pretty stinking good in my opinion.
Yeah, they played Fantastic. Like you mentioned, there were definitely a few here and there. I mean, just players, again, switch offs that were a little slow in that second game. Bomberry, like right away on that first goal, just did
Yep.
not get out there to go get the player. The second happened, I was like, well, he was a little bit slow. I don't know why. He like backed off. I thought it looked like he thought a switch was coming, and I don't know why he thought the switch was coming with some other defensive player, but he just let that kind of go. And so like you said, they had a few plays here and there, but for the most part, the defense through 2 games just really, really solid all the way around. And the way they were able to, I know you mentioned it a little bit, but the way they're able to just completely eliminate Mark Matthews, and I mean, he is a 90+ point player. He's the one they brought in playoffs specifically to get them over the hump and beat the Buffalo Bandits, and he shriveled terribly.
Six turnovers in game 1.
Yeah, I would say game 1 especially. I don't know if he was playing catch with wires and they were just having a good time, but the amount of interceptions and caused turnovers that he gave up that looked just brutal. He just passed it right to them, and they were like, okay, and just took it and ran away. And every single time it happened, he just stood there, hung his head, and was like, like what a bad play. And like, yes, he had an okay second game, but like he's the guy they brought in to get them past the Bandits, and he did not look good. And yes, again, he had an okay second game, but that first game, he looked miserable. And even the second game, he also had another couple turnovers and just did not look all that great for a player you brought in specifically for this matchup.
So, Phil, before we dive into the goalie here, we're about 50 minutes in, so we'll pick up the pace once again. Second sponsor, Mr. Sizzles at 346 Connecticut Street. Phil, I don't know how you say that one perfectly every time, but in Buffalo, New York, they're opening 2 more locations, one in Clearance, one in Hamburg, later on in the summer. Can't wait for those doors to open, so Buffalo's entrance has a little bit more space and wiggle room for me, at least. They're open 7 days a week, 11 to 11, with a brunch menu on Saturdays and Sundays from 11 to 3. And as promised, Phil has a nice pairing for us. Phil, what am I eating today?
Yeah, with their new menu drop, I'm going with another new menu item this week. I'm going with the Big Parm because the picture of it looks ridiculous in the best way. It is a buttermilk fried chicken, red sauce, roasted garlic butter, provolone and cheese, curd, grilled cheese, and describing it does not do it justice. You really have to look at the picture. It is literally a chicken sandwich with all of the Parmesan type stuff you'd like, sandwiched between 2 grilled cheese sandwiches as the rolls. It looks absolutely incredible, and I'm going to pair that with a seasonal Little Birdie black rum, Campari, pineapple, and lime because Campari is Italian, and so I'm pairing it with the Italian type sandwich.
I absolutely love it, Phil.
Thank you.
People have to let us know if they like my pairing or your pairing better.
That Big Parm looks incredible. I mean, 2 grilled cheese sandwiches with chicken in the middle. How do you go wrong? How do you go wrong with that?
Does look absolutely delicious. So if you like our pairings or want to pair something yourself, check out their menu and their new menu on their Facebook page, social media pages, wherever, and at MrSizzles.com. Phil, let's dive into the goaltending here. Matt Vince, what more is there to say besides those 2 words? Is just Matt Vince.
That's it. And we're done.
It's either Matt Vince or Brickwall. I don't know where you want to call him. But, for game 1, massive save on Rogers in the first quarter. 2-on-1 save versus Ostrowzer in the first quarter. Brickwall in the second, and including in the second penalty kill. He was absolutely amazing in that one. And then a massive save right before halftime where he pinched the boards there, keep them shut out. It was, that camera angle was perfect. Game 2, more penalty kills, big saves. Big save in the third quarter early on to keep the game right where it was. Big save after Mickey blocked it. Bushi was all alone in front, made a big save there. And then shortly after, Bushi's all alone again, another massive save, and then a penalty kill save. Again, he was just, the old saying is your best penalty killer is your goaltender. And yes, they have plenty of good penalty killers in front of them, but Matt Vince has just come up with big time save after big time save. We've said it all along here in this long stretch that they've had where even before then we were like, okay, Matt Vince is playing good. The defense in front of him's hurt. It's interchangeable pieces all the time. You're just not seeing that Matt Vince that's been making Matt Vince type saves earlier in the season. And then he comes back from his injury. And then they go on this big time run. And he has been making those big time saves. We'll go over the goals here because there's only 12 of them. But the first one, Martin transition, I said Dane Smith played it poorly, 6-1. Massive battle in the corner between Frazier and Bucky. They were wasting time up there. Martin comes down to help. He busts his butt back, but that jab step by Schreiber, Martin has no chance. He overcommits. It's 8-2. Delayed call, ball barely gets by the line, Phil. I had to rewatch it. Yes, the ball did. Yeah, it did cross the line. They almost kept it out, but that's how close it was to only allowing 3 and setting a new Buffalo Bandits record. But 11-3, and then a low shot by Small on the power play makes it 11-4. Can't really blame him on any of those 4 there. And then flash forward to game 2. Like you already mentioned, Bomberry, goal 1, too much space on Bushi. It's 1-1. Craig dunk goal between Vince and Priolo.
No idea
heck of a
shot.
shot.
Was happening there though. Like that wouldn't. I didn't understand watching that so many times. Like Vince has one side of the net covered, and Priolo just kind of, I don't know what he was doing. Like he's supposed to have the other side, and he just didn't. He I don't know. It was very weird. I understand that the dunk was kind of between them, but Vince had his post covered, and Priolo didn't really do anything. He just kind of, I don't know. I was expecting him to hit the stick or I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting out of Priolo, but something different. He just kind of watched it go. It was very confusing. It was a weird goal.
It was the only good play Dan Craig made the whole series. Cam Wires played a bit too deep on the penalty kill on the third one. Kind of left Small with all kinds of time. Priolo was covering the top. I think it was Mark Matthews. Didn't get back to Corey Small, and you had Cam Wires playing super, super deep. I think that one was on Cam Wires. No Dan Dawson on the penalty kill for these next 2. You had Martin on the first one. He has nowhere near the height Cam Wires does, and they just, Mark Matthews shot it right by his head and make it 4-3. Second one, this time it was Bomberry out there. Same thing. They don't pinch. They don't close the gap. Penalty kill, 5-3 Toronto. Priolo, this was the one I was talking about. Just horrible defense on that one, making it 6-3 Toronto. Seventh one, I don't know what McKay was doing. He tried to split the defense that were pinching on him. In the transition game, Priolo and Martin are slow to get back, and then it's 7-4, another transition goal. Another one you can't really blame on Vince. And then no one slides to Mark Matthews to make it 8-4. And that's the one where it was like, okay, what's going on here? Defense completely shut it down. I can't really, going through all these ones, it's another one where you have 12 goals go in, and if you're just looking at it, as a normal fan, you're going, Mad Vince let in 12 here in this 2-game series. But when you're really looking at it, I don't think he did. I think a lot of these are either good decisions by the Toronto Rock, who, again, have good players. They're going to put the ball in the back of the net, or just lapses on defense, which are going to happen in a 60-minute game as well. I can't really, there's none here. The notes here, bad. Under bad for goalie, I have nothing. I thought Mad Vince played as good of a goaltending position as you could in the NLL.
Yeah, 104 saves through 2 games.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Insanity. I know Nick Rose also did pretty well, but just I think Vince was almost at a 90 save percentage on 104 saves, and I forgot how many shots. I can't do that math. Oh, that's not even 116.
They had 58 and 58, so 116.
Yeah, 116. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. And he looked great. Like you said, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things in these 2 games, that he did not give any cheapies up. I mean, yes, there was the one that in the second game kind of went through him a little bit, that hit off him and he almost got all of it. Then it still had just enough to go in. And then the one in the first game, like you said, barely crossed the line, but neither of those are really on him. And he still almost made both of those saves, but there were no cheapies like we've seen a few times, where I think it was the Georgia game where he had 2. It was the first goal of their game, and then the last goal of that Georgia scored. Both of those Vince absolutely wants back. So he knows he, should have had those, and they just weren't good goals to give up. In this series, between 2 games against an even better offense, I don't think he let a single soft goal in. And the ones he did let in, like you said, either on the defense or just great plays. Other team is allowed to score. He's not going to have a shutout ever. If he does, my goodness, congratulations. Even 4 goals, just ridiculous, especially when 2 of those were pretty late in the game, when the game was already well in hand. But, overall, I mean, like you said, there's just nothing really to say other than really, really happy he decided to come back. Playoff Matt Vince, there is no beating him. I mean, Nick Rose, Triple Crown winner, absolutely deserves all the credit he got. And I really think he did have a good series between the 2 games. I mean, yes, in the second one, he let in 10, but a lot of that came in the fourth quarter. In the first one, he did only allow 8 of the 12. So for the most part, he did play well, but Vince, you know, did better. I mean, Vince was the better goalie in these two games. And when you're going up against the, goaltender of the year, most likely throughout the regular season, Vince still outmatched him and honestly did it in a pretty big fashion. I mean, he just looked so dialed in. Like you said, those big saves he's making, those timely saves. And then I know their power play wasn't great, but they did score 4 on the power play. And even just the amount of opportunities they had on the power play was it 6 and 8? Oh my God, 14 power play opportunities between the two games. I mean, that is a lot of odd man opportunities for a team to be shooting at you, and for them to go 1 of 8 in the first game, and the one, like you mentioned, came all the way at the end of the game. And then they did end up getting 3 of 6 in the second game. They figured it out a little bit with 3 straight power play goals to give them that 5-3 lead. But outside of that, I mean, Vince was just pretty much unstoppable. And even that, if you take of the 12 goals he allowed, take 4 out for, being power play goals, and you're down to 8 even strength goals between 2 games. Just absolutely ridiculous. And we'll talk about the next series later, but I'm a smidge worried about that one. But as Vince and the defense keep playing like this, you really shouldn't have too much to worry about.
Yeah, the penalty kill as a whole in the playoffs so far, they're 12 of 18 killing off. That's 67%.
Really,
absolutely
really
filthy.
Good. Also, I had it after the first game. Toronto, I think it was in their last 5 games, not including the second game. It was before that. They had a .24 conversion percentage for like the last 5 games, including that 1 of 8. They
Pretty
were
good.
not doing well on the power play toward the end of their season.
So we'll wrap these 2 games up here like this. This is the miscellaneous section. Farrell, I thought he played fantastic in game 1. Like, absolutely. I think there was maybe 1 clean win by T.D. Erlin, and it was late in the fourth quarter. I thought Farrell did unbelievable, even though he only won 9 of 20, and, T.D. Erlin won 11, so the edge to Toronto. He was fighting and no clean wins that allowed a break on Matt Vince. I thought he played unbelievable in game 1. Game 2, didn't really like his game. I thought he did not play very well. I thought T.D. Erlin got the better of him. He studied tape and went back and beat him. But, Farrell won that final faceoff with 7.9 to go in the second game.
The fans
Dane
on his
Smith's,
side with that win.
Yeah. Yeah. Frazier, goalie interference in game 1. I thought that was questionable, but who really cares at the end of this? Nanaco getting thrown down, no call, but then a slight push in the back. He gets that call. I thought the refs were not ideal in this series whatsoever, and I'm not typically known to call out the refs, but I didn't think they were handling their play calling very well. Cross check on Martin after the goal. I don't know how that can be called a cross check after the goal. Shouldn't that be a dead ball foul? But just smaller things here. Dane Smith's massive hit at midfield that felt very Brian Campbell-esque. I don't know about you, Hostrauser. The cramping. I know a lot of people are booing him, but if Buffalo did that, it's a smart play. It's a smart veteran play to stop the run to say smart. That you're cramping. Yeah. And then the final thing here.
Cosmo used to do it all the time for the Bandits. Yeah. He would always have a equipment malfunction when they weren't doing well, and he'd take a knee and have somebody come out there and check some of his equipment. He used to do it all the time.
It's a game within a game. And then the final thing here is Patty Gregoire. I know a lot of people, especially in Banditland, for whatever reason, still don't understand that in the regular season, when the announcers are talking and it's an away game, they're talking about, you're really favoring Toronto here. You're really favoring Halifax. It's the home arena fans, commentators. That's what it is. I don't know how people, 3 years in, still don't understand that. But this one was TSN, and those two are very, very good at their jobs. They're some of the best in the business. Even before the game, I was talking to Brooke. I was like, I love these two. Like, they're Jim Abbott and Patty Gregoire are awesome. And then at the end of the game, this is how I'll leave it, and then you can wrap up the games however you want. Patty Gregoire pretty much called a bunch of Bandits fans complete idiots, and I absolutely loved it, by questioning Matt Vince whatsoever in the year. And we never did that on this show. What we were saying was he is not making those unbelievable saves that he had done in years prior, but we thought it was because the defense was interchangeable every single game. When was the last time you had a solid rotation that are continuous from the game before? You rarely got that until this run. Then a switch made, and he was playing unbelievable. And everybody that was calling early in the season, hey, let's see what these backup goaltenders can do because we're going to need somebody after Matt Vince. Shut up. I'm saying it flat out. Shut up and eat crow now. I do it all the time by my bad statements. If you said anything negative about Matt Vince early in the season and you didn't blame the defense and the health-wise that they were doing, take a seat on the sidelines for this one. It's not time for you. Matt Vince is Matt Vince in the playoffs for a reason. I said it going into the playoffs. There's no other goalie I would want between the pipes than Matt Vince, and he's been showing it nonstop. And to have Pat Gregoire call out those people that were calling out Matt Vince early in the season, eat crow, sit down, and shut up.
Yeah, I did love it. I didn't, I don't know why I missed it the first time, but I did go back and watch after you mentioned it, and
it was awesome.
It was fantastic. Loved it. And yeah, I do like those announcers quite a bit throughout the entire game. They do a really good job of just calling, throwing things in there without. We've heard some bad ones where they ramble about absolutely nothing and don't talk about the game or what's happening, or you just
get a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, just some of the announcers. It's just unfortunate, but they are not very good. Those two do an absolutely excellent job. I don't really have too much else to throw out there. Like you said, I haven't gone over the second game yet. I do know I wasn't a fan of some of the calls. The first game, the refs, I did not like very much in what they were able to do and what they were calling. And I'm very, 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 very worried about the Albany series and penalties, but we will get to that later. But what they did do really well for the Bandits was the challenges, and that burn goal. I know you said that you thought it wasn't a goal. If we're being honest, I thought it probably wasn't a goal, but I do think what they said was correct. And I do think the announcers agreed as well that there was not the best of angles or opportunity because it was called a goal on the field. I really don't think there was enough evidence to overturn that one. And we've seen that happen way too many times against the Bandits. So it was nice to see a inconclusive kind of go for the Bandits, but even the call to have the goal called back on that 3-1/4-0 call, to have the guy in the crease and be able to call it. Both refs immediately called that was no goal because a secondary player was in the crease. And sometimes those are plays that will go missed by the refs, and it's nothing against them. They're watching a lot of things. And if a guy his toes are barely in the crease and they're watching a goal go in, they might not see that. They might not call it out. And honestly, if that was challenged by the Bandits, I don't know if that does come back. And certainly if they call it a goal, you're not getting the opportunity to have that flip and go down the other way and have Cloutier score. So huge credit to the refs for calling that correctly and calling that a player in the crease, because that is a play that can sometimes go missed. And I think they did a really, really good job calling that. So yes, they weren't the greatest with penalties, which we'll go over in the article, but for the most part, they did a good job on challenges and calling things goals or not goals on the field and overturning things. And the 5-minute majors were interesting as well. I think in the first game we had a couple that were flip-flopped and just things were a little off, but for the most part, not terrible. But I am quite worried about that Albany series.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty of time to talk about that one.
Sure
we'll
do.
wrap this up with the milestones. Steve Priolo did move into 10th place in NLL playoff history in games played. Dane Smith did have the goals and is now tied with Dan Dawson for 7th in NLL playoff history. Steve Priolo did pass both Robert Hope and Zach Currier for 3rd place in NLL playoff history. Dane Smith did have enough assists. He is now in 2nd place in NLL playoff history. He also had enough points. He is now 3rd in NLL playoff history. Steve Priolo did pass Brody Merrill, and then Brody Merrill only played in 1 game, so you can thank for that. So he's now in 3rd place in NLL playoff history, and San Diego's done, so you can just pull ahead even further. Kyle Buchanan is up in over 100 for his playoff career in loose balls. Steve Priolo did pass Mark Stainhouse for 2nd place in playoff history for the Buffalo Bandits. Chase Frazier did pass Darius Kilgore for 7th place in Buffalo Bandits playoff history. Toka Nanakuk did pass Darius Kilgore for 7th place in Buffalo Bandits history. Chris Cloutier did pass Darius Kilgore for 5th place. Bad weekend for the Kilgores. 5th place in Buffalo Bandits playoff history. Josh Byrne did pass Mark Stainhouse for 3rd place in Buffalo Bandits history. Toka Nanakuk got more than 5 points, passed Brian Benesh for 8th place in Buffalo Bandits history. Actually, I think he's tied with him. I think he had 5 points, so he's tied with Brian Benesh. Kyle Buchanan did pass Rich Kilgore for 10th place Buffalo Bandits history in points. Ian McKay passed Jay Thurnbert. So did Dane Smith and Loose Balls for 7th place in Buffalo Bandits history. And last two, Connor Farrell did pass Phil Sanderson and Randy Frazier. So he's now in 9th place in faceoffs, and passed Randy Frazier. So he's in 10th place in faceoff wins in Buffalo Bandits playoff history. A lot of milestones, but I already did milestones for the next show. It's even more possibilities.
Do you think Brody Merrill's finally hanging it up, or is he going to come back around playoff time?
I thought he hung
year?
it up last year, and then he was
That's
like, "Oh, this team might be able to win. Let me come out of retirement."
I feel like we'll see it again.
Would have been
next
an
year.
asterisk.
Well, you guys looking good at making playoffs. All right, let me see if I can just sneak in here real quick. All right, let's try to win.
Yeah, Phil, we're not going to break down the NLL games between San Diego and Albany. That's the plan for Friday. Get you ready for the Albany series. But you got anything else you want to add to the show before shutting down a very long show, but had to dissect 2 games? And when we would dissect games, it usually lasts close to an hour. So getting it around an hour 10, pretty good for talking about 2 games.
Yeah, massive sweep of the Toronto Rock for 6 straight playoff. Was it 6 straight playoff
8
victories?
straight.
I would say 8 straight, actually, if you go like way back, and even
dating back to 2014, I believe.
And even more recently, just between regular season games and postseason, they have just completely owned Toronto, which is just crazy given how strong of a team Toronto is. They had literally their best season of their franchise history, and the Bandits just kicked them out in 2 games. Heck of a win, heck of a series. Love it. Keep it going. Congrats on getting to the final. Let's win another championship.
Yeah, so congrats to the Buffalo Bandits. They have an opportunity to do something not very many teams do, and that's repeat. And it's very difficult to do because once you win one, all the eyes are on you. And sitting at 5 and 6, things looked a little sketchy, but they rebounded very well, got to the playoffs, and a lot is history here. On our next show on Friday, we'll be able to break down the San Diego Albany matchups, kind of get you ready and geared up for the week stretch, since it's not coming up this weekend. It's the following weekend of NLL finals, because kids got to graduate from college. So whoop-de-doo. That just shows how little people care about the NLL, and college students bump the NLL finals. Yeah, got a ways to go. But
Lovely.
Real quick before wrapping this up, I will, and we've been critical of this, and I'll try to wrap it up quick. We've been very critical of NLL and Buffalo Bandits not getting the coverage they want. And as of late, since they turned this around and made the run to the finals, you're seeing a lot more coverage from a lot more media outlets that typically wouldn't cover the Buffalo Bandits, because whether there's not enough time, or they're just not interested and there's not enough coverage for them, or so on and so forth. And we're going to be the year-round coverage, so good for us. And we're the only podcast that goes around year-round covering this team. But I've been seeing a lot of negative opinions on media outlets that typically don't cover the Buffalo Bandits are trying to latch on, quote unquote, latch on when the Buffalo Bandits turn their season around. And we even sent out a tweet saying, hey, it's a lot of Buffalo Bandits fans, especially media outlets, are coming out of the ground floors here. I can't remember how I phrased it, but they're coming out of the woodworking. I think that's what the woodworks, trying to cover this team. It's good for the sport. It's good for the team. No matter when they come on covering this team. And WGR, a team that rarely ever even mentions the Buffalo Bandits, started their 3:00 show with an hour with Dave Buchanan on. Gobble that stuff up. This is what's going to grow the sport. In having a team that can possibly win back-to-back championships, being in the finals for 4 straight years. This could be the thing that finally unlocks this sport and unlocks this team to get the coverage that this team has desperately been craving, and that people have been desperately craving. And when people say, hey, we want more coverage of this team, and then you get it, you can't be the same people that complain that people are jumping on the bandwagon when the team's good. Every single thing of coverage is good for this sport and good for this team. So don't shy away with it. Gobble it up as much as you can, because the more that you show that you're interested in it, the more time they're going to devote to covering this team. So that's all I got on this one. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective and sitting on my little rant there. Thank you to Tap That Tap Room and Mr. Sizzles for sponsoring this show and this episode. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com Phil's article will be out tomorrow on Wednesday, breaking down these two games. Phil, good luck with that. Follow us on our channels wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.